Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons 5e as it happens, and we're going to talk about a variant rule or optional rule, which is the Healers Cat Dependency. Now this is a rule which is supposed to add an element of realism to the game, and there's a few things I want to talk about with regard to this particular optional rule. So if you want to turn to page 266 of the player's handbook, well, not the player's handbook, turn to page 266 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. It gives you some details on the Healer's Kit Dependency. It's very, very short, and it reads as follows. A character can spend any hit dice after finishing a short rest until someone expends one use of a Healer's Kit to bandage and treat the character's wounds. So essentially what that means is when you take a short rest and you use your hit dice, you have to finish your short rest, and you normally spend your hit dice. It doesn't matter how many hit dice you spend, provided you have enough available, but you have to also expend one use of the Healer's Kit, bandages or whatever else, to treat yourself. It's basically trying to add an element of you're not just sitting there and resting, you are having to patch yourself up and cover your injuries and scratches. And that's fine. There are a few things I would like to point out with regard to this, and nothing particularly huge though. So let's have a look at how we can break this down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the pros, the things that I think are good about it, and then I'm going to give you the cons, the things that I think are probably not quite so useful and aren't going to be helpful to anybody running the game. And I would say they're not hugely problematic as far as I'm concerned, but that's beside the point. Let's have a talk about the pros, the things that are good about the Healer's Kit Dependency. So it has very little effect on the game mechanics. There's pretty much nothing that you need to really change. You can bring this in and it's not going to affect very much in terms of the actual core rules. But you know, it's like anything, it does mean that players will have to go and buy themselves a Healer's Kit, which shouldn't really be a big deal. It will encourage the players to actually purchase a Healer's Kit so that they have it available, because I know a lot of people forget about buying a Healer's Kit or ignore it, and it allows you to actually stabilize a creature or an ally in the middle of combat, so you don't have to roll that medicine check of DC 10. Now, it's not a very hard check, but it would be great if you just pulled out your Healer's Kit, that's an interaction, used your action, and stabilized them, and it's done. So there are some huge benefits to encouraging it, not just the fact that it can be used after a short rest to regain some hit dice by using some hit points by using your hit dice. So, great. It doesn't really affect anything major, as I said. It's a very simple change to make, so it's not very complicated. And the Healer's Kit is quite cheap, even for a first level character. Most first level characters won't have an issue purchasing something like this. You might see other player characters actually taking the time now. I know at my table it's very rare. They will often leave it to the cleric, the ranger, or the paladin, or the bard, somebody who can cast cure wounds, and they're often the person who carries around a Healer's Kit, and everybody else just sort of ignores that particular feature in the player's handbook that they can pick up and use themselves. So it will encourage people to use it, hopefully, in the middle of combat. I know I struggle with that constantly with regard to my own players at the table. Okay, some of the cons. It will probably mean that you're going to have somebody having to track the use of those healer kits. So will the player actually track the Healer's Kit use? Or will you find yourself in a situation that the players don't worry about it at all, and instead, as the DM, you'll have to check on your players and find out, did they actually cross some of those uses off, or have they just said, oh, I'm just going to ignore it, he won't notice. So it could be a little bit of extra bookkeeping that you didn't need to have there before. And also too, like I said, you won't necessarily know if the players are actually tracking it at all. It's possible that characters could run out of uses of their Healer's Kit in the middle of combat, so a player might find themselves, particularly if they carry one around and actually use it, they might find themselves in a situation where they've been using it for short rests, they've been away from a township or cities for quite some time, they haven't been able to refill or restock the Healer's Kit, and they run out of uses in the middle of combat when somebody gets downed and they want to stabilize them, and instead they're going to have to make a medicine check with a DC of 10, which is not particularly hard, so it's not a huge deal. It also, bearing in mind, it does shift the concept of hit points. Using the Healer's Kit Dependency, it shifts the concept of hit points being lost in combat more towards somebody taking injuries, rather than being a collection of different factors. I've done a video on what are hit points, and look, hit points are supposed to represent a lot of different things, and not all of the hit points that you have are supposed to reflect meat or damage. It does also reflect fatigue and things like that. So it does shift the concept of hit points more towards just sheer physical damage. Healer's kits will constantly be in use, so they're going to need to be replaced or refilled at some point. So there's going to be a process, and given that it's possible for a first level character to only take one short rest, but they're not going to stay level 1 characters forever, I would say they're going to find themselves after about 4 or 5 short rests having to replace their Healer's Kit or refill it. And it's going to cost them a little bit extra. So one of the cons is it's not a lot of money, but it will cost them a little bit extra that they didn't have to pay for before. But hey, as they level up, will that really matter? They've got so much gold they don't know what to do with as it is, so maybe it's just going to be one of those positives rather than a negative. And it's a bit tricky if you have players that aren't regulars. Now, this is going to be a house rule. It's not going to be a standard rule because it's not part of the core rules. So you're going to have to house rule this as the dungeon master, which means if you don't have regular players and you've got people who drop in and drop out who are casual players, it's going to be very hard for them to get their head around this. So I wouldn't be suitable unless you're using this in your home game with regular players who are constantly using it, and therefore they're going to remember that you have this house rule that they need to make sure they have a Healer's Kit so they can regain their hit points by using hit dice after a short rest. Look, in conclusion, I think it's not a troublesome rule. I think it's actually fine, even though I won't personally use it, although it's tempting to. The problem is, for me, I don't have a whole lot of regular players. I have people who drop in and out, and therefore it's going to add a level of complexity that I don't need. Whereas, if you are running a game where it doesn't matter, you've got people who are quite regular, then it's fine. Just keep doing it. So that's all I have to say on the Healer's Kit Dependency. If you found this video helpful or informative, please share and like the video. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, then hit that subscribe button right underneath the video or on my channel, and then there's also a bell button beside the subscribe button on my channel and under the video, and if you hit that, that'll give you a notification when I am live, and I am live quite often, and it will also let you know when I publish a video. Sometimes I do a pre-recorded video and I will publish that and it'll let you know that that's up there. If you want to support my channel, then hey, watch my videos, watch more of my videos, really good for me, get a bit of ad revenue from that. I don't do Patreon, but down on the description there are affiliate links. I get a small commission for whatever you buy, and you pay exactly the same price. And if you don't buy online, don't worry about it. Look, if you have questions, start asking your questions in the live chat box right now. And if you want to ask questions, you can leave a comment down below later on when it's published. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.